Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here as always, here today with Juck Miletti. Juck, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it's bittersweet. It's bittersweet. A long, entertaining, fun recruitment to follow has come to an end, and it's one that will go down, in the record books. It's one that we'll talk about for years to come. It's one that when recruitments come up in the future, we will hearken back to, similar to how we have with David Sanders' recruitment
Mhm.
throughout this one. It's just kind of a baseline as we see how business is done, where you take your shots, and it's just one that we're going to remember. And now it's over. We didn't come out at Ohio State on the right side of things, but I think we learned a lot. I certainly learned a lot because I'll tell you, Tony, and I think we were both kind of on the same page here going into this thing. I was of the opinion that Ohio State, obviously knowing who they were getting in the muck with, was going to be willing to get in the muck, so to speak, with them and go all the way. And I just kind of put my faith in that because they wouldn't have done it if
Mhm.
if because they knew exactly who these guys were if they weren't prepared to do that. And I'll never do that again. Like I'll never have that benefit of the doubt thinking that they won't uh, you know, kind of go at it what appears to be kind of half cocked at the end is how it felt to me.
Well, I think on one hand, you have Ohio State making if you take Tennessee out of the picture, making the richest offer for a high school running back
Yep.
in this brief recruiting era,
Yep.
this NIL era. So that's not nothing.
Yep.
And that's a significant thing. Knowing that that's just the baseline. And then there's going to be more that comes from that. But also, you know who you're going up against, and it's Tennessee, and you've done this before, and you've won one, you lost to David Sanders, you won the Legend Bay, like two very different recruiting
Yeah.
battles and a level of star power, if you will. So you knew that Tennessee was going to go as all in as they could, and they're all in on one player is more all in on one player than Ohio State, and it probably always will be. Um, probably like we say this, and it's like, well, Jeremiah Smith is different, but I don't know that he couldn't have gotten more from somewhere else. There's more. There's a reason a wide receiver would choose Ohio State. That isn't just money, but there was a lot of money there as well. So going up against Tennessee like this, it was, it's interesting because, talking with people, there was always this feeling like, at least from the outside, like, well, what happens when Tennessee just, increases their offer to the point that you're not going to match it? And I was always told, well, this one isn't, the family's not, money isn't the draw for the family. That's not what they're focused on. And looking at it, and my view is Tennessee may see that, but at some point you throw enough out there to the point where it can't be ignored. And then it's not a draw, it's the deciding, it's what puts Tennessee over the edge, because obviously he's torn between Ohio State and Tennessee, likes both programs, likes both coaching staffs and the opportunities, and Tennessee basically doubling Ohio State's offer and also adding all kinds of perks. It seemed like at some point they started bidding against themselves in this one because it was already so much more than Ohio State's. So on one hand, it's like, you're going to do that, but I think you want Ohio State taking that swing. But also, I think you have to recognize that some batters just struggle against certain pitching, and Tennessee's pitching, it can be pretty darn good when they're only facing a batter or two.
There's no doubt about it. We're looking at a Tennessee program who does great with their top prospects, just like they did last year with TK Keys, who at one point was the number one wide receiver in the class, Faison Brandon, who looks like a young Vince Young, a top three quarterback in the class. They locked both those dudes down. We know firsthand very well, everybody watching the David Sanders recruitment the year before, and everything that came with that. And we all knew that going into this one, what they would do. Now, what surprised me and where I think Ohio State also made a miscalculation is they're looking at last year. They're looking at Savion Hyder. They're looking at Derek Cooper. They're looking at what those number one backs were going for in the class of 2026. Savion Hyder, roughly $800,000 to $1 million. And when they pulled out on those recruitments, I think they sat and had a conversation. We're only going to do this if we're going to be willing to go the extra mile for David Gabriel George. And their discussion probably went like, it's going to cost us over $1 million. Are we going to be prepared to do that? And when they decided that they were, it was all systems go. It was denying everybody else who wanted to commit. They weren't even really keeping anybody warm because they wanted to make sure that there was no agents coming around talking back channeling, that there's backup plans. It's all DGG. I think the miscalculation was they thought they were bidding against Tennessee in the end, but really Tennessee was bidding against Tennessee's future, not Ohio State. Because to your point, I don't think I think that Tennessee put that big initial offer of close to 2 million up right at the official visit, which was a week after he came to Ohio State, essentially like doubling it just immediately. Now, that's not how you negotiate. That's not how you bid against somebody, but that's what they were prepared to do. And they just went straight to it right off the rip. And that, I think, is the miscalculation Ohio State made, thinking that this would be something like the Hyder or the Cooper battle. And, 1 to 1.3 is going to get you right there within the ballpark. At minimum, you're going to be at 80% of the offer. And if you're at 80%, if you're Ohio State going against almost anybody else, you feel like you can win.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with them on that, taking a 20% discount with all the extra benefits you get at Ohio State, that feels like even Steven. But as we look at it at the end and what it's rolling out, and obviously numbers are, not all over the place, I think we're pretty dialed in as to where this is. It feels to me about 65% of the total package is what Ohio State offered. And 65% when you're looking at the length of a contract, which is, again, just a 3-year deal, that's going to be a $2 million difference, along with the perks and benefits that we've seen with the family members getting what they're getting, the Baylor school getting the Adidas contract today. I don't know how you're going to say no to that. That's a huge difference. And I've seen a lot of, obviously, Ohio State fans are furious with the way this looks in the end. And that, we heard all along that this kid wasn't like this. This isn't what he was about, etc. And I'll just say, I view David as, in my gold standard for an Ohio State football player has always been Emeka Egbuka, just like the most mature, about his business, professional type dude. I view David as a similar dude. And I don't think this had much to do with him at all as to how this all played out in the end. I think Tennessee came with these offers, came with the plan. We'll give you the cherry on top, the number, knowing Ohio State couldn't do that. Like, all that stuff was offered to him. He wasn't out here asking for it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
how the uncle was operating, perhaps a different story. But at the end of the day, I don't think David should be feeling the brunt of this, that he wasn't the guy we were led to believe he was.
No, and I would agree. Talking with him last year, very mature kid coming from Canada and down to Tennessee, and just as down to earth as you could expect. And then you're dealing with this. Obviously, he feels like I believe in myself. I can succeed at Ohio State. I can succeed at Tennessee. I can succeed at Middle Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So where he ends up, it's almost secondary. It's just, going somewhere and making that decision. And when you're talking about that kind of offer, like Tennessee, congratulate Tennessee on winning this recruiting battle. All hands on deck. That's coaches, that's boosters, that's apparel partners. Like, they left no stone unturned in getting this done. So they did a great job with this. And now Ohio State, yeah, it was Ohio State versus Tennessee and Adidas and all of these other factors. And David Gabriel George is just like, I want to play football. And at running back, when you can make as much money as you can, as quickly and for as long as you can, an extra couple $1,000,000 is significant.
Mm.
And I went through and I pulled all of the leading rushers of the college football playoff national champions. And because people are like, well, is Ohio State going to be able to win it without David Gabriel George? Everybody at Ohio State and everybody elsewhere believes that he's a first round pick. How are you going to win it without a first round pick? And like, the leading rusher of these national championship teams is over since 2014 to last year or till this year has been the 77th overall draft pick. And
Okay.
they're drafted in the third round. There's been a handful of first rounders, Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Davenport, Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU in 2019, Travis Etienne from Clemson in 2018. That was the year he was their leading rusher when they won a national championship. Derrick Henry was a second round pick. Quinshon Judkins was a second round pick. But my point here is Najee Harris, first rounder to Pittsburgh, and he rushed for 1,000 yards in each of his first 4 years. And as a first rounder, you get a 4-year deal with a team option for a 5th year. And that team option for the 5th year then puts you among the higher paid players at that position. He rushes for 1,000 yards in each of his first 4 years. They don't pick up his option because it's like, well, you're already like 26.
Yeah.
And he began his career as a 23-year-old, which is old for a running back. So, yeah, like, you only have so many years. And for Najee Harris to be rush for 1,000 yards every time every year that he's been in the league, and Pittsburgh to say, we're good, you go be a free agent. We don't need to keep you around. Like, that says something about the position. And we know the disregard the position had for a while in terms of being a first round pick. It was like, well, you just don't do it. And now they're doing it again because it's okay to do. Just ask Jahmyr Gibbs and Saquon Barkley and things like that, and Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm not going to fault a running back or his family for wanting to secure his future for as long as possible. And this is kudos to Tennessee for being all in. I know Ohio State is certainly not happy, and they will survive. They will be able to move on. The 2027 season will certainly, I'm sure Ohio State had some plans for what he could have done, but now this is recruiting, and this is life in a big city. And when you're fishing for the big fish, sometimes you lose your bait.
It's true. When we talk about David Gabriel George's decision, and from the Ohio State fan perspective, a lot of people just can't believe that anybody would choose Tennessee over
Mhm.
Ohio State with the development and the NFL development. And when running back is probably the least developed position. And I think that this guy is going to go get as developed as he can get anywhere he's going to go. I mean, he's already a kid who squats 600, benches 400. So physically, he's not far off from, I mean, he's stronger than a lot of NFL
Mhm.
backs already. It's why we see so many freshmen come in and play early. It's more of a natural skilled position, and there's not a ton that goes into the development of an NFL running back. It's just natural ability, and he's got it all. And even if he didn't like Tennessee as much, right? Even if it was, yeah, I like Ohio State a little more, is it worth me sacrificing $2 million when this isn't a 30-year commitment? This isn't
Mhm.
us on the job market saying, should I take more money over here, even though I hate this place and get stuck there for my career? It's a 3-year proposition. And honestly, I don't think the money was close enough. But I think the more interesting part here to me, Tony, is Ohio State is so good at winning the traditional recruiting battle and setting themselves up when they put guys in this position to take that discount or not take that discount to come to Ohio State for all the extra things Ohio State offers. It felt to us early on, as we've talked about this recruitment throughout, like Ohio State was winning that traditional recruiting battle. The relationship with Carlos Locklyn,
Mhm.
and anybody blaming him is like he's the guy that was winning the day here. And as the uncle, who is obviously not a big fan in Buckeye fandom anymore, despite him claiming Buckeye fandom himself, um, the uncle said all along, even when he was giving his little letting Ohio State down lightly article,
Mhm.
that Locke was the number one relationship he had with anybody. But it was the whole Tennessee staff that he was comfortable with. And then when he goes on to the Josh Heupel Ryan Day comparison, it sounded like it was night and day. And then Wilt Fung reiterated this in the article right before the announcement 2 days before. Ryan Day was involved in all the meaningful conversations, and he turned it on late, I think was the phrasing. And that to me, Tony, when you know that you are all in on this guy for a couple of years, and as skilled of a recruiter as Ryan Day is, and he is excellent himself, I would have thought, and I thought all along, that he was all in on this one. If no other, this is the one he was all in on. And it doesn't really sound like he was. So if we can believe that, right?
Mhm.
And again, with a grain of salt. But if that's the case, I'm shocked. I don't know what the strategy was. If maybe he thought, I'm going to let Locke continue to run point because he's doing so well, and then I'll come on late and turn it on. But perhaps another miscalculation in this deal, along with how much money it was going to take to land him, was the strategy Day employed here because he's so good. I have to think Ohio State would have been in much better hands if he would have been right up there running point with Locke, as it appears Heupel was for Tennessee.
And I believe lot that Day was like, yeah, let Locke run point, do his thing because it was working. Basically, at this point, I know the lunatic fringe is not going to be happy with Ryan Day in terms of this, but it was it a miscalculation? Maybe. I also think that even if Ryan Day was the number one head coach in this recruitment, what's Tennessee going to do? Make it 7 million? Yeah. Like, so I don't think that there's anything that at this point, when you look at this offer, where is Tennessee going to draw the line? And I don't know that there would be a line because they've already gone in so far. So they're just going to continue to push, I think. And so I don't even know if a better relationship with Ryan Day could have done anything. But it was interesting to to hear that where Tennessee was more hands on. That's what I said. Like they were all hands on deck with the coaching staff, with Adidas, with boosters. They took it. I don't know, maybe just they spread the love out more, and rather than Ohio State just let Locke build that relationship, which everybody says was the best relationship he had. So it's like, well, that worked. That portion worked, but maybe there could have been more involvement. But I don't think that's gonna. I don't think that would have fixed stuff. And we had this talk a couple months ago about no predicting this very thing that Tennessee was going to come in with a better offer, and that would it behoove Ohio State at some point to just pay more than Tennessee so that Tennessee and others like them know that they can't just come in at the last minute. Not that this is the last minute, but like so that they know that, oh well, Ohio State will also pay up. So this might not be a battle worth fighting, or they know it's going to be a fight. And it's like, would you really want to lose? And this was the conversation we had a couple months ago. Like, would you really want to lose David Gabriel George for $300,000 because you won't go that high? But even then, like, I don't think we didn't. It wasn't $300,000 that they lost it by. It's much more than that. And so, like, at some point, you've just, you know, you let Tennessee. Okay, go ahead and name that tune on one note. Basically, is what Ohio State is doing here because they've got a deeper roster that they have to pay for. They have, running backs that are already on the team. But I just go back to, would it be better? Would people be happier if they're not swinging for this? And the answer is no. But also, you have to realize who you're facing and know that it's like getting into a fight with a crazy person. It's not smart because you don't know what they're going to do. And that's what this is. When you get into a recruiting battle with Tennessee, you don't know what they're going to do, but it they probably got more than just like a knife on them. They've probably got some other stuff, and they're going to pull out all of the stops. So you've got to be careful with that. But yeah, I thought maybe back then you can't lose this one. You can't allow it to be lost for a few $100,000 because of what he could mean to a national title chance. Obviously, this was more than that. And I go back to losing Bijan Robinson. I think cost them a national title in probably 2022. Because he was a 2020 recruit, not going to win it in 2020, perhaps not going to probably win it in 2021, but 2022, as banged up as they were at that running back position, I think he would have been the difference. Does that mean that David Gabriel Georges would have been the difference for Ohio State? I don't know. Like I said, the average leading rusher for a national championship team has been drafted 77th overall. And that's if you don't include Roman Hemby, who led the Hoosiers in rushing last year and went undrafted.
It's pretty crazy, that last part right there. But it's the saving face part that we talked about. I'm totally with you here in that I don't think it mattered what you did. I really don't. I think that it was them who was not going to lose regardless. It didn't matter if they had to kick out 3 guys in their class that they're already got or committed to paying. They didn't care. They weren't going to lose this. And when you look at it from their angle, they got a class now with 8 blue chippers, 10 3-stars. They can obviously afford to put more into that top tier guy. Is it smart? Well, certainly from a hype, keeping your fan base engaged. I mean, these are things Ohio State doesn't have to worry about. Like, you want star players when you're a team that often drops back to winning 7 or 8 games. Star players keep fans engaged. It keeps you on the news. It keeps you in the highlight reels. I get the strategy, and I think it is important for a program like that. It's much easier to land a couple of dudes like that in TK Keys and Faison Brandon than it is to build a core championship roster that just stays top tier year after year after year. So obviously Ohio State knows what they're doing. They're doing it better than anybody else in the country, in my opinion. And I almost look at this and say, again, miscalculation to get this deep involved and go all in on this guy against this opponent when we already saw this with David Sanders. You should have known better. And maybe that's just my irritation because I'm listening to Tennessee fans gloat and call Ohio State broke. But I just feel like we saw this coming a mile away. Certainly they knew it could happen like this and likely would. And maybe the better play was to go after Kamon Spell or Landon Williams-Callis instead of the kid at the Baylor school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, albeit an excellent back. But I do think that there is validity, and I still think there is validity to the point we were making back then, that at some point you do need to put your foot down because there are far more desperate programs, and I call Tennessee desperate, but I don't mean desperate like they suck. I mean desperate like they're desperate to get back in the national championship style conversation. And I appreciate that, and I respect that about them. I respect the desire and the passion of the fan base and everything about the program. But it is a desperation play right here for sure. And there are far more places like that than there are Ohio States, right? So you can't just allow them to come in and bully you. But on this one, I mean, at some point, you were never going to win. It just feels like you were never going to win. So I don't think really this was the one to put your foot down on, I guess is what I'm saying. Maybe we might see something happen with DJ Jacobs later on with Miami, and then that's the one I absolutely like, no, you can't lose that. And I don't mean to talk that into existence, but I'm just trying to think like there will be another case, another scenario where we're talking about this, and I'll definitely agree that no, you can't lose this one. You got to let it be known that every time it goes this direction, you're not just going to bow out.
Well, and there's also, everybody talks about the locker room aspect of an offer like this. Ohio State's running backs all know the name David Gabriel Georges, and they know Locke wanted him and Ohio State wanted him. But to imagine him coming in next year and being like the highest paid running back when Bo Jackson is coming off of his second 1,000-yard rushing season, like that's also a tall ask. But Ohio State's willing to go to some lengths. Tennessee, as we've seen, willing to go to pretty much any length. I do wonder, how about this for conspiracy theory? Ohio State was never interested in David Gabriel George. They just wanted to force the price up as payback for the David Sanders stuff. That's just something I'm thinking of right now. But also, Ohio State wasn't the only group that was duped. The experts that had Ohio State crystal balled for 6 months, like, and we all knew that eventually Tennessee was going to do something. And even the experts who've seen it every year, every player, or every recruitment who have been involved with this for years, yet they're willing to say, okay, I think Ohio State's going to get it done here, knowing that, well, there's always going to be a late offer, or as you said, not even late, but just increased offer from Tennessee. And so it's funny, we all saw this coming, but I guess we were just waiting until the train actually hit us before we said ouch.
The money now being involved in the roster construction, I have found just the most fascinating addition to college football, and I really love it. And I dig into these numbers and find as much as I can on this kind of stuff. And even like I'm saying it's a miscalculation by Ohio State. It was a miscalculation by all of us, like you said. I didn't think they would go up to what they went up to. I no chance. Are you kidding me? When last year's guy, look, the difference between Savion Hyder and David Gabriel George is minimal at the most. I mean, Savion Hyder's a beast up at Michigan, by the way, and we're going to see that all this year. Total beast. Would have loved if Ohio State were able to land him. And we're talking David Gabriel George is walking in making, I don't know, two and a quarter amount than what he just made last cycle. That's not the way this usually goes. So everybody made a miscalculation on that. And again, Tennessee wasn't even bidding against Ohio State. They just put it out there. I don't know how you play with that. I don't know how you deal with that. Like you said, man, you never want to mess with someone who's not afraid to go to prison. It's just not a good idea. Not a good idea. But
somebody who actually, like, I like being in prison. Like, you leave those people alone.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But Tony, the other thing is to flip to the positive note in the future, Ohio State in 2025 and 2026 brought in 5 running backs and put itself in position to be able to take this swing. They put themselves in position by bringing in Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, Turbo Rogers in 2025, and then coming back with Favor Key and Legend Bay. They've got a stock of young dudes, and there's a lot of people who will say, well, none of them are super high level. We want a guy that's super high level. And yeah, sure, we do, for sure. Everybody does. But you were able to take the shot because of what you've done there. And with Elijah Newman Hall, who's a top 5 back in 2028, what do you do now? Well, you double back on a couple of guys, and I got a list, and we'll put that out on Buckeye Insiders here probably in the next couple of days and maybe do a show about that as to who the potential guys that we might see in this class. What I don't see happening, the most unlikely scenario here is we see a big swing, moving that money over to like a Landon Williams-Callis or a Kaman Spell, trying to flip them, because the philosophy at running back hasn't changed. Their spending philosophy has not changed. This was specific to David Gabriel George this cycle. It wasn't like we're going after one of the top 3 backs and we're going to pay him $1 million. It was specific to him. They believe totally in him. They don't see a number 1 running back in the country, Kaman Spell, as an $800,000 a year type kid, nor Landon Williams-Callis, who's 5'7.5". And there's nobody else that, and I'll even go one more, Tony, Nigel Newkirk, who I really like. And if Ohio State was able to come out of this class with Nigel Newkirk instead of David Gabriel George, I said all along, like, I'll consider it a B. Like, I really like the kid. And he's now the number 18 ranked composite back in the country. and he goes and visits Alabama the week before he comes to Ohio State and shuts his commitment down, doesn't make that visit to Ohio State. I do believe Ohio State was his number 2. However, this is a kid who is getting $400,000. It's the 18th ranked running back in the class. Obviously, Alabama views him as a top 10 running back, and I do too. But Ohio State just paid Bo Jackson as a freshman $150 as a top 10 back. They're not bringing him in. They'd have to, go up to $500,000 to flip Nigel Newkirk. He'd be now coming in making more than 3/4 of the running backs in the room. And that doesn't work for the number 18 back in the country who's not going to threaten to play in his freshman year. You can try to swing it with a David Gabriel Georges, potentially transcendent player. So, even that's out of the picture here. So where do they go? We'll talk about it. But they put themselves in position to be able to take this swing. To me and you, it was an all upside play. If you lost, it doesn't hurt you. It might hurt you briefly in this class here, but I like where you sit.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly liked him enough that they didn't care what happened afterwards.
Right.
Landing him, they'll deal with it. Whether there's fallout, doesn't matter. Not landing him, there's going to be some fallout, but your fallout is, well, we still got the deep room that we love. That's Locklyn's and Ryan Day's thought. And that money, they're going to have to pay, who knows what they're going to have to pay Legend Bay in 2027 based on what we see this year. So yeah, bringing in somebody that is not going to play in 2027, they're already going to have guys who don't play in 2027.
Right.
I think the situation then gets to 2028 when presumably Bo Jackson is gone and maybe Isaiah West is still around. And then you still have Isaiah West and Legend Bay and Elijah Newman Hall. And, who knows what happens with Turbo Rogers. Favor Aki will be around. There's still going to be guys there. It's just, I think they made it known how good they think David Gabriel Georges is.
Yes.
So that makes the loss hurt that much more because you've just lost somebody that you told us how good you thought he was, and that's going to be hard for people to get past.
Yeah, and that's the thing when the way they showed us and told us how good they thought he was, when people talk about these numbers, and I would never, they should never be spending this much on a running back, and they always put that for a running back, and it's just well, what they're doing is thinking they're spending this much on a transcendent player who could potentially tip them over the top to a national championship. Forget the position. That doesn't matter in this discussion. And if they really believe that is what he was going to be, it's absolutely worth it. It's worth whatever you paid Jeremiah Smith was worth it, regardless. Having the best player in college football on your team and winning national championships pays off in the long run. It more than pays that salary that you paid that kid. Of course, it's a gamble. It always is. But that's how they felt about him. And that's why I never thought twice about, all right, $1 million, it is what it is. Somebody gets pissed on the roster, it is what it is. And that's basically how they went about it with Jeremiah. And Emeka Ibuka didn't walk out that door. You know what I mean? So
now the whole team, the first time they see Jeremiah or the first time there's a practice, it's oh, I get it. Yeah. No, he's a bargain. It's there's no problem. It's if anything, players are angry that he's not making more. It's he's only making 1.7. That's how is he going to eat? But anything else? I think we said some good things, but go ahead.
Yeah, perspective is important, and just bebopping around on the 247 current recruiter rankings, individual recruiters. Yesterday, we have got number 1 and number 3 locked down as Ohio State coaches, with Larry Johnson at number 1 in the country this class and Tyler Bowen number 3 in the country this class. The single best defensive line class in the modern recruiting era, the best offensive and defensive line combined class in the modern recruiting era at Ohio State. And it's just a class that I feel like I've been just dying for years. And then when you add it on to the 25 class, which was also good, not great, but good, it almost feels like it's kind of just a program elevating haul. And to me, I would not trade this class for another class that included David Gabriel George. And if I talk to 100 Ohio State fans at the beginning of this cycle and just put it on paper, Tennessee's class with DGG versus this class, I don't think it'd be a discussion at all. So perspective matters. I still think that that it's going to be, potentially a top 5 class, maybe 6. We'll see how they're able to swing it after the summer, or after the first 3 weeks of the season. But it's going to be right there. Really high blue chip ratio, number 4 in the country right now. I just ran that last night, and things are looking really, really good where it matters, and that's in the trenches. So I'm pleased.
Yeah, as they say, football starts up front, and Ohio State's up front class this year is on top. So we'll see how it goes. What do you guys think? Are you go ahead and throw your comments in YouTube, get them out, and we'll take a look at those. It's okay to vent. It's not okay to, I don't know, mail packages to families. Just don't do that. Thumbs up is always appreciated on the YouTube side. We are live over at BuckeyeInsiders.com. The site is up. It is running. The message board is going. We got content there constantly. Would love to see you there. It is the absolute best way to support what we do. So head on over there and check it out. That will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.